Sound check, sound check, sound check, 1, 2, 3, sound check 2, sound check, check. Testing a sound check, testing sound,
It's just like,
test,
we were
test.
out for lunch yesterday and, we were on the golf course on Tuesday.
Welcome, everyone. I would like to call this meeting of the Hamilton Municipal Heritage Committee to order. A reminder that all electronic devices are to be switched to a non-audible function during our committee meetings. Please note that quorum is present at this time. We will now go through our roll call. If I can just get you to acknowledge that you're present here in the room and just make sure you have your mics turned on for that moment. Councillor Kretsch?
I'm present.
Janice Brown?
Present.
Karen Burke is absent today. Graham Carroll?
Present.
Charles Dimitri sends his regrets. Lynn Lundstedt? Present. Robin McKee? Timothy Ritchie is absent today. And Will Rosart. Before we begin, in honor of Indigenous Peoples Day, that was yesterday, I would just like to read the land acknowledgement. The City of Hamilton is situated upon the traditional territories of the Erie, Neutral, Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Mississaugas. This land is covered by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, which was an agreement between the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabeg to share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. We further acknowledge that this land is covered by the Between the Lakes Purchase, 1792, between the Crown and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. Today, the City of Hamilton is home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, North America, and we recognize that we must do more to learn about the rich history of this land so that we can better understand our roles as residents, neighbors, partners, and caretakers. Our first order of business today is the Hamilton Municipal Heritage Committee Heritage Recognition Awards. And we had a fantastic celebration last week, but we did have a few of our award winners that couldn't join us. So today we are proud to have 4 of those recipients with us. So we're going to be doing a small presentation. We'll begin with our very first presentation. While Graham goes up towards the front. So a number of different awards that we presented. This award here is adaptive reuse of a heritage property, and this award is being presented to a heritage property owner who demonstrates an outstanding contribution to the conservation, restoration, and preservation of Hamilton's built heritage through the adaptive reuse of a property. And the more and more we see in the city, that is becoming more and more important to the heritage community, that we're able to take our heritage properties and do something great with them. Grant?
Okay. 29 Harriet Street is a well-preserved example of early industrial buildings in Hamilton. It began life as the Harper Presnell Cigar Company, but most people know it better as the Fuller Brush Company. Today it is owned by Aeon Studios, and they're doing a very good job as caretakers of the property, keeping it nice, neat, clean, and preserving the heritage features of the building. And even like that little mural yet in the one end. It looks really good. So I'd like to thank you so much for doing the hard work and keeping the building around for all the citizens of Hamilton to enjoy in the future. Thank you. Thank you. There's a little token of appreciation for the hang up. And
that's great.
This contains like our comic books and stuff for coloring books. Sorry, to give you an idea of the example and a copy of the award.
Oh, that's great.
Well, thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Listen, you know. We're big fans of Hamilton. You know, we really appreciate and welcome the welcoming that we've had in the city. And you know, I came up as a location manager. I've done a lot of filming in these heritage buildings, and for me personally, and for our group, it's rather important that we kind of shine things up as opposed to tear things down and try and build these monstrous brick or concrete and glass boxes sort of things. So no, this is great. Really appreciate the recognition, and hopefully we can just keep up our contribution to the preservation of these heritage properties. So
Give them the good news story.
what's the go? Oh, Grant Avenue Music Studio. So now I'm one of the co-owners of Grant Avenue Music Studio, which for anybody who doesn't know is the original studio of Daniel Lanois, and have had the likes of U2 and Bruce Cockburn and Gordon Lightfoot. It's a historical property in Canada. We believe it's the longest running, consistently running music studio in Canada. And it's pretty original. If anybody wants to come by and have a look, like all the work that the Lanois did is still there. We're going to keep everything that they did and then just kind of add some new elements to kind of expand, you know, who can actually use the studio. But yeah, if anybody's into music history and heritage, as I'm sure you all are, then I'm sure you could get something out of it. And so feel free to reach out anytime if anybody wants to come by and have a look. Thank you very much.
Cheers. Me again. Okay, next is St. Thomas Anglican Church, the former St. Thomas Anglican Church. So Tal-Daddier purchased the closed former St. Thomas Church, which was erected in 1869 and was designated under the Ontario Heritage Act in 1992. And with his amazing vision, managed to adaptively reuse the church as rental apartments, which, as we all know, are badly needed in the city. Tel managed to get 19 well-appointed units into this heritage structure with minimal impacts on the heritage features. Hopefully more developers will follow Tel's lead and help preserve Hamilton's heritage by reusing already built structures. By reusing these buildings, we also reduce climate damage and we keep demolition materials out of the landfills. Thank you very much for your work, Tel. This one? Oh, yeah. Sorry, it's just a coloring book. Thank you. And thank you again for that tour. That was amazing. I really appreciate it.
Guys. Yeah, no, appreciate this. Sorry I wasn't able to make it to the actual ceremony, but yeah, I'm not I mean, it says developer, but it's just the one project I did, I guess. I mean, I've done smaller ones. We've done quite a few, but it was a real treat to work with the Heritage Committee, both staff and different bodies. It was a unique project. We had a lot of roadblocks, and obviously trying to keep a building that was this old and make it work with today's building code was beyond, you know, challenging. Obviously, many times I'd have developers, real developers, come over and say, "Why don't you just build a 50-story tower? You have D1 zoning. It's great. It's easy." It just didn't make sense to me. First of all, I'm not a developer, so those funds probably didn't exist in my realm. But what made this so unique was going into this, and I've bought other properties, like I said, but not this big. It's always, oh, heritage is so difficult to work with. Oh, it's a heritage building. It's going to lower the value. You're never going to resell it. And I had such a different experience, and it was the idea that if you can collaborate and work together with heritage and with the city, it's not about black or white in terms of like it can only be one way or another. It was about what's the best way forward for the city of Hamilton, for heritage, but also for future development. So I just found it really completely different than what was told to me what my experience would be like working with both the council with city and heritage. I just found it very collaborative, very understanding. Didn't mean it was easy, but it was very much about how do we move this forward together versus my way, your way, or someone else's way. So no, I just appreciate all the continuous feedback, collaboration, and support, and hopefully there's more projects like this that that can kind of see the benefit of heritage and the committee and everything that you guys are doing here. So thank you very much.
Our next award that we're going to be presenting is for volunteer recognition. I'd like to call up Mrs. Pam Charlton. So Jim was a very dear friend to this committee. He was a longtime volunteer. He was a member of our inventory and research working group. And those that knew Jim and those that didn't know Jim, you just knew him as the guy with the photograph, with the camera. He was that guy that walked up and down the street and you wondered what he was taking all those interesting pictures. What was he so interested in? But Jim found interest in everything. And the greatest joy for us was when he would come to a meeting and say that he found something. It was a treasure, a piece of a heritage building, a vintage sign, anything that just he thought was lost forever, and he wanted to get a photo of it. The certificate that we're presenting today is for Jim Charlton in recognition of Jim's many contributions as a volunteer member of the Inventory and Research Working Group and of the Hamilton Municipal Heritage Committee. But more so, I want you to know that he was a dear friend to this committee. After Jim's passing, when we found out, and we were all heartbroken, I told a story to the group, and I had seen on Facebook, Jim had actually walked up my street and he had photographed. My house was one of the ones on his tour that day. So I reached out to him and I said hello, and within a week's time, I found this lovely gift on my doorstep. And he had taken the time to take the photograph of our house, to have it framed, and he left it as something that I could have as a dear gift and a keepsake, and it's something that I treasure in my house. So know that there's a little bit of Jim that's with all of us. We all have memories, that coffee time, that
More places than one.
exactly. So on behalf of the committee, we would like you to have this in Jim.
Thank you very much.
It's okay.
He would be very honored if he was here to accept this. Our biggest joke around the house was he'd say to me, I'm going out to take a few pictures, I'll be back in an hour. Several hours later, he'd show up and I'd say to him, oh, you remembered where you lived. But he would be very honored to have this, and I know I appreciate the fact that he's been acknowledged by it. Thank you very much.
Our recipient today for the Heritage Streetscape Award was unable to join us today. So speaking with Malian Properties, they're going to be joining us at a future meeting. But we're going to acknowledge our Heritage Property Conservation Award. I'd like to welcome Janice up to do a presentation.
Would Elizabeth Spratt please come up? Thank you. I'm absolutely delighted to present this award to Elizabeth. I love her home. I call it the Pink House. I think she calls it the Pink House. It is painted her favorite color by Benjamin Moore, if anybody wants to replicate. It's called the Pink Cherub Pink. Sorry, I knew it had a cherub in it, an angel. Very interesting. I did not know who the owner was, and I'm often told that I can't go on the property. I'm only supposed to do things from the street. So I went to the Dundas Museum and Archives, and I spoke to the curator, and I said, do you think the woman that owns 79 South Street would welcome me and speak to me if I knocked on her door? Oh yeah, well that just gave me the go-ahead. So I did knock on the door and I did meet Elizabeth, and of course we have a mutual friend, so that helped a little bit as well. But this is a colonial revival home, and it was built in 1944. I wished we had the original pictures on here, and the original picture shows the house. It looks exactly like that, except it's in the middle of a field, and I think the road is dirt. I think South Street wasn't even paved at that time. And it was a prominent family that this home was built for. The present owner, Elizabeth, she has restored, she's preserved, and she has maintained this home beautifully since 1999. And I can tell you the windows, the fascia, the gables, are all original to the house. And her walkways at the front, they go from her driveway in front of her a garage, and they have been replaced to replicate the original. So there's been every effort to maintain the originality of this charming colonial revival home. And of course, the stucco has been painted her favorite color, and I do want her to tell us a little bit about the final thing that went into this house, and I wish we had a picture of that. I just may have someone take a ride out and get a picture of that. So if you'd like to, thank you, Elizabeth.
Right.
You did a beautiful job.
Very good. Well, thank you. So I wanted to thank Janice for contacting me in the beginning. And when she came in, we looked at these original pictures, and Janice was the one who suggested that I put the original door back on the house. You could hardly see it, but it was beautiful. And I never liked the door that was on the house when I arrived in 1999. There was a metal door and a screen door in front of it, at the front of the house. And so we had Alan Stacey from Heritage Mills, who did a beautiful job of it. He also found a lot of rot in the frame as well as the sill, so that got all fixed. So it's a beautiful door now. And the house is actually a little more pink than it looks in that picture. It's been painted since then, but it was always pink when I arrived. And I feel like I'm the lucky person that lives there, because it's a lovely house, and a lot of people really love it. So
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So-
And on behalf of the Hamilton Municipal Heritage Committee, I would like to present you with this award. And
Thank you so
for
much.
all that you do.
My pleasure. Okay.
Thank you, everyone, and congratulations to all of our award recipients. We're going to take a short 10-minute recess just to do a couple of photos, and then we'll come back to our meeting shortly. Oh, can we have a mover and a seconder to go to recess?
I see Graham and Lynn.
Anyone opposed? Seeing none, that item's carried. Welcome back. Mr. Clerk, are there any changes to the agenda?
No, there are no changes to today's agenda.
May I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
I see Graham and Lynn.
Is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that item is carried. Under declarations of interest, are there any declarations to be declared today? Seeing none, we'll move on to the approval of our meeting minutes of the previous meeting, May 19th. May I have a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
I see Graham and Janice.
And if there's no discussion, is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that item is carried. Under communication items, we have items 5.1, 5.2, and 5.3. May I have a mover and a seconder to put the communications on the floor?
I see Janice and Graham.
Are there any questions from the committee in regards to any of those items? Janice and then Graham.
Well, Graham can go, because we're saying.
I'm just curious why the cemetery partial closing is coming to us. I don't understand that.
Through the chair, so Alyssa Golden, Cultural Heritage Program Lead at the city. So it is a requirement for them to give notice to the Municipal Heritage Committee. There's no action that needs to be taken. There's no action that needs to be taken by the committee. It's just for your information. We do have, though, a delegate available in case there are any questions about the process.
Will, go ahead. You have a question?
I have a question, but I guess I'm ahead of asking it.
Is this in regards to the communications items?
Yeah, but I believe it's coming out with the delegation later, so that should be addressing it then, should I not?
Is it a question for the delegate?
Yeah.
Directly? Okay, so we can address it then.
No?
No, we'll address it then with the delegate.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there any other questions in regards to item 5.1, 5.2, or 5.3? Seeing none, may I have, we'll have,
Sorry. We'll need a motion to defer 5.1 until after the delegate so that we can speak to 5.1 again after the delegate's been received.
okay. Do we have a mover and a seconder to defer?
Yes.
I see Will and Graham.
And is there anyone opposed to the deferring? No, seeing none, then that item is carried.
And then on receiving the remainder of delegate, the
So you had
communication,
the
sorry.
mover. So you had the
Yep.
mover and a seconder. So is there anyone opposed to those items? Seeing none, that item is carried. May I have a mover and a seconder to put the delegation request on the floor? Item 6.1, we have Matt Johnson, Urban Solutions, Planning and Land Development, respecting the public notice of the partial closure of the Jewish congregation, Anshe Shalom of Hamilton Cemetery for today's meeting. Mover and a
I see
seconder.
Graham and Janice.
And are there questions? This is just accepting the delegation request. And if is there anyone opposed? If not, that item is carried. We now move on to our delegation. We have Matt Johnson from Urban Solutions, Planning and Land Development.
Hello, my name is James Stanley. I work at Urban Solutions. I will be standing in for Matt Johnston.
Okay, welcome.
Thank you.
James, did you have anything to present at all, or would you just like to take questions?
No, the reason for requesting delegation is to just be here to answer any questions the committee may have.
Okay, so Will, go ahead and ask your question of the delegate.
What exactly is happening at the cemetery? And for the members' information, where is the cemetery actually located?
Hi, so it's located at 389, 391 Lime Ridge Road and 427 Lime Ridge Road East. It's near the Legion. It's just the cemetery right beside that. What is happening is we had brought the cemetery, it was not designated as a cemetery previously, and in June 2021, we went through the process to have it become a cemetery. In doing so, we inadvertently added 2 portions of land that did not have any internments and or scatterings. And so the reason for this partial closure is to just take those 2 slivers out of the cemetery designation that we had inadvertently deemed cemetery lands in June 2021.
So we're not looking at any bodies being uninterred, et cetera?
No, sir. There are no, through an environmental assessment, we did phase 1 and 2, there were no scatterings or burials to be found in those 2 portions of land to be partially closed.
Okay, that helps understand the situation. Thank you.
Do we have any other questions of our delegate? So there's no other questions. Thank you, James, for being here today. May I have a mover and a seconder to receive the delegate?
I see Graham and Lynn.
And is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that item is carried.
And then just back on item 5.1.
Yeah.
Item 5.1 to receive it, or any other questions?
So in regards to item 5.1, is there any questions? Oh, go ahead, Graham.
I do live in that neighborhood, and just so everyone's aware, they're actually cleared that land and started building on it already. It's not like it's in the right order, I think. I guess they realized they oopsed, because there is a clearance on there.
Sorry, just to clarify, the 2 portions, it's not the new build that is beginning. It is to the right, closer to the Legion. There used to be an old caretaker's house that no one was living in, so that was removed, but no building has started on the 2 portions because we have to do this process to be able to do any building if there were some to be done in the future.
Thank you for clarifying that, because you're walking by that, I assumed it was that portion along Kingfisher and across the back that you were talking about. Thank you.
No problem.
Will, you have a question?
Is planned there then for building?
Did you say, is there something planned? I didn't really hear that.
Is something planned to be built there?
No, as of now, no. It's just, again, it was inadvertently added in to cemetery lands, and there's no need for it. So we would just, the client preferred just to have it removed out of there in case any future development or building were to be done on that land. But as of now, there's no plans for development.
Okay. The building in front, the house, that is still separate property?
There is no longer a house on that land. There was previously, it was an old caretaker's house, and it has been removed.
Okay, I'm talking right on Upper Wentworth. That was Duncan Beatty's insurance office for years.
I don't believe that's on the lands in question.
No, that's what I'm asking. That building is in front of them.
It is not. It is not part of the lands, and it should still be there.
Right. Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Are there any other questions? If not, may I have the mover and a seconder for item 5.1?
I see Graham and Lynn.
And if there's no further discussion, is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that item is carried. Thank you again, James, for coming today.
Thank you for having me.
We now move on to our staff presentations. Item 8.1 is the recommendation to designate 64 Hat Street, Dundas, under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act, PED 23124 in Ward 13. So we have Meg Oldfield, Cultural Heritage Planning Technician, here to give us a presentation.
Thank you. Just let me share my screen. Good afternoon, everyone. Meg Oldfield, Cultural Heritage Planning Technician. Today, I'll be presenting Staff Report PED 23124, which recommends that the property located at 64 Hat Street be designated under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act. As you can see, the property is located in Dundas on the corner of Hat Street and McMurray Street and backs onto Spencer Creek. The property is comprised of 12 structures built between the mid-19th and mid-20th centuries. The property was listed on the Municipal Heritage Register in May of 2017, and at that time was added to staff's designation work plan. In January of 2021, the city received a request for a formal consultation for a new development on the site. However, this redevelopment proposal was not pursued by the owners. In June of 2022, a zoning bylaw amendment application was received requesting the property be rezoned to permit other uses on the site, excluding residential. Staff indicated that a cultural heritage impact assessment would need to be submitted as part of this application. However, at this time, a CHIA has not been received. Internally, staff prepared a cultural heritage assessment report, which was provided to the owners on April 23rd of 2023 for their consideration and feedback. A more detailed summary of the planning application process can be found in the staff report. In preparation for this report, staff conducted 2 site visits to the property, one in December of 2022 and one in January of 2023. A cultural heritage assessment report of the property was prepared by staff, which is attached as Appendix C to this report, which includes historical research and the cultural heritage evaluation of the property using Ontario Regulation 906, and staff drafted a statement of cultural heritage value or interest, which is attached as Appendix B. It's been determined that the property meets 5 of the 9 criteria contained in Ontario Regulation 906. I'll now outline the cultural heritage value of the property. This property is comprised of 12 vernacular structures ranging between 1 and 2.5 stories, constructed between the mid-19th and mid-20th centuries. 2 of the buildings were constructed circa 1846 and are rare and unique examples of pre-Confederation architecture in Upper Canada and are 2 of the oldest extant industrial buildings in Dundas. The property is directly associated with several prominent figures, including John Gartshore, the original owner of the property. Gartshore established the Dundas Iron Foundry and Machine Shop in partnership with James Bell Ewart in 1838. The foundry produced internationally renowned large machinery, including steam engines and boilers for the Hamilton Waterworks, which are still on display today. The property is also associated with James Bell Ewart, who in addition to financing the foundry, also opened Dundas's first bank and invested in transportation projects such as the Desjardins Canal and the Great Western Railroad. He also served as Justice of the Peace, Postmaster, and was President of the Dundas Town Council. Additionally, the property is also associated with Valley City Manufacturing, which was previously known as the Valley City Seating Company, which operated out of the property for over 120 years, manufacturing furniture for schools, churches, and laboratories. In the late 1910s, the company was contracted to create furniture for Parliament Hill's Centre Block, and in the 1940s produced wooden cases for Bofors anti-aircraft guns. Finally, the property helps define the historic character of Hat Street and the community of Dundas, standing out from the surrounding mid-20th century streetscape. The property is visually, historically, and functionally linked to its surroundings, as its location on Spencer Creek, which powered the foundry, was crucial to its early success. Additionally, due to its prominent location and tall brick chimney, the property is considered to be a landmark. In summary, 64 Hat Street is comprised of 12 structures ranging from 1 to 2.5 stories that were constructed between the mid-19th and mid-20th centuries. 2 of the buildings were constructed circa 1846 and are rare and unique examples of pre-Confederation architecture in Upper Canada, in addition to being 2 of the oldest extant industrial buildings in Dundas. The property is associated with its first owners, John Gartshore and James Bell Ewart, as well as Valley City Manufacturing, which occupied the building for over 120 years. The property helps define the historic character of Hat Street and the community of Dundas, is visually, historically, and functionally linked to its surroundings, and is considered to be a local landmark. This is a condensed version of the Statement of Cultural Heritage Value or Interest, the full version of which can be found in Appendix B of this report. I'm now going to go through each of the structures and their elements at a high level, but generally what we'll be designating here is windows, lintels, sills, and other sort of decorative elements and details of the buildings. So important to the conservation of 64 Hat Street is the front elevation and roof line of the circa 1846 central 2.5-story stone structure, which you can see here. The front elevation and roof line of the circa 1850s western central 2-story brick structure. The front and side elevations and roof line of the circa 1850s western end 2-story brick structure. The front elevation of the eastern central circa 1910 2-story brick structure. and the front elevation of the circa 1960 eastern end two-story structure. This includes all the historic elements and decorative details present on these features, and it's important to note that the rear elevation as well as the interior features are not considered to be heritage attributes. Additionally, also important to the conservation of 64 Hat Street is its location fronting onto Hat Street and backing onto Spencer Creek, as well as its tall brick chimney. Before we proceed, I'd just like to thank Anne Gillespie for providing background research for this report, which included an initial cultural heritage assessment. With that being said, are there any questions? Okay, well, in that case, thank you, everybody.
Always a sign of a good presentation if there's no questions. So if there's no questions for Meg, can I have a mover and a seconder to receive the presentation?
I see Janice and Lynn.
Is there anyone opposed to receiving? Seeing none, that item is carried. We will now move on to the report. So we have before us the recommendations that were outlined in the presentation, that the city clerk be directed to give notice of council's intention to designate 64 Hat Street West in Dundas. Do we have a mover and a seconder to put forward those recommendations?
I see Graham and Lynn.
Is there any questions? If there's none, we'll move to vote. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that item is carried. We now move on to our consent items. May I have a mover and a seconder to put on the consent items on the floor? We have 9.1 and 9.2.
I see Graham and Lynn.
Are there any questions in regards to the consent items? Janice? No?
Thank you. Through the chair, just a comment on 9.1, and it is the oval window that's being removed on the second floor, and apparently it's going to be stored in the basement. I was a little bit concerned about that because many of us suffer water damage, so I'm not sure how, and I know it's private property, so I'm not sure how that window will be protected in the basement. I thought that was a little vague. So that's a comment, and not that we can, I don't know if we can do anything about it, but I'm just going to say that's vague. And the other thing, it's really unfortunate. I just happened to be watching City Line today before I came, and Brian Gluckstein, an amazing designer, was at the Door Store in Toronto, which is an amazing place if you want to find historical artifacts. And there was an absolutely gorgeous door, and the window was embedded, the oval window was embedded in the door, and I just thought, wouldn't that have been a fabulous condition to put on? Thank you, those are my comments.
Thank you, Janice. Is there any other questions or comments? If not, we'll move to vote. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that item is carried. Item 10.1 is our monthly report on proactive listings of the Municipal Heritage Register, June 2023, PED 23146. May I have a mover and a seconder to put the recommendations on the floor?
I see Graham and Lynn.
So the recommendations before us is that staff be directed to list the following properties on the Municipal Heritage Register as non-designated properties that council believes to be of cultural heritage value or interest, as outlined in report PED 23146, in accordance with section 27 of the Ontario Heritage Act. And that is for 89 Wentworth Street South, Hamilton, Ward 3, and 91 Wentworth Street South, Hamilton, Ward 3. Again, is there any questions? If, go ahead, Janice.
Yes, through the chair, I just want clarification because it's something that I guess I'm incorrect, or maybe this is incorrect, but on Appendix A of PED 23146, page 2 of 4, item number 6, the last statement, further, Peen is recognized for his prominent work at the Carnegie Library, now courtrooms in the central neighborhood. I always thought that that was in the Durant neighborhood, unless boundaries have changed. Thank you. That's my comment.
Through the chair, we can double check that. So that property is on the south side of Maine, west of, yes, east of City Hall. Yes, that should be, we will correct that in our records moving forward. Thank you for highlighting that.
Good catch, Janice.
Typical teacher.
Is there any other questions?
You're taking your sandbox.
If not, we'll now move to vote. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that item is carried. Item 13 is our buildings and landscapes. 13.1 is buildings and landscapes. Are there any additions to the list today that we should be reviewing?
Madam Chair?
Go ahead, Will.
I just thought of it, but can we review these in our final meeting this year? As to what they're like right now, because I mean, some of them we never hear anything about.
Well, this isn't necessarily our last meeting. Yeah, so do you have anything to report on your properties, Will?
No, not offhand,
Okay.
but there's nothing's happening on mine today, matter of fact.
Okay, so what we'll do is start a speakers list. Would anyone like to report on their properties today? So I've got Janice and Graham.
Under A, endangered buildings and landscapes, red, I'm going down to number 15, 163 Jackson Street West, Pinehurst, Television City. For information and perhaps a brief update, the 1984 building is now down, and in passing by, they are now starting to add gravel, and they are filling in the hole. And I just was reviewing the conservation plan, and I do know that while that building was coming down, there were supposed to be vibration reports, and I just don't know if there have been vibration reports. If you have them, was there any damage to the building when that was coming down? I do know that, again, according to the conservation plan, the Pinehurst itself is to be fenced, and there is to be security until the building is occupied as an office. I don't know if the office is going to come about immediately, and in the meantime, once we come into winter, will we be getting that heating system in place? There are just a lot of questions about the conditions now that that building is down, and it will be at least the lot. There's nothing there. I don't know what they're going to do with that, whether they're going to fence that. And of course, much of the existing back openings are open, including you can walk down the stairs and you can go into the basement. That is not secure at this time. So that's all to do with the next steps. If anybody can update me on that, thank you.
Through the chair, yes, so staff have been in touch with the proponents for that project. They are still in process of that work. So what you're describing in terms of, the gravel preparation and now having demolished the rear contemporary portion, we were updated as they were going through that process and the findings of the heritage consultant that was required to assist with the removal, the final removal portion that was directly connected to Pinehurst. So they have been meeting their expectations in terms of the heritage permit process for that. I'll have to double check, but in terms of the vibration reports, I believe that was related to the new construction, not to the demolition, but I can double check. I don't have that in front of me. But I can check our records for that. And just in terms of, I guess, timing expectations for the fencing and the interim measures in terms of occupation of the building and heating and all of that, I do understand that the works of the demolition and closing up the hole from where the addition was is still underway. So I would assume that would be taking place after those works are complete.
I'll pay attention. I shall pay attention. Excuse me, through the chair, shall I go with my second one? Oh, sorry.
I just wanted to speak to that one before you get to the second one, if it's
thank
okay.
you.
I apologize. There's a police services board meeting at 1. I'm working with the clerks to try and schedule these things so I can come to them for the whole meeting. So apologies, I've tried to do that, but we're going to try and make it more successful because there's always a conflict with the police services board specifically. and there's a very important meeting starting at 1 o'clock. Specific to the property Janice is talking about, there's been a lot of issues with pests specifically leaving the property since demolition has occurred. I don't know the extent of the kinds of pests, not a pest expert, but I'll just say there's been an evacuation of the local inhabitants of the property to the nearby neighborhood. I live across the road. And so I will say that I wonder if this can be something that could be addressed. I know that the Ward 2 team has already followed up with city staff, is already on this discussion, so maybe connect with whomever they're talking to. But I just wanted to flag that as this is going to continue to be a theme that we're going to see in downtown spaces where there's density, especially in buildings that didn't have anyone living in them. And then we're just like a pest accumulation area. And then they vanish and the pests are like, oh, I don't think I should be here anymore. Let's find a friendlier place to be. So then they go and find them. So I just want to flag that for you as an issue. And if it's okay, Janice, I want to just say one more thing about the James Baptist Church thing and give you an update. So I've been, just going to say briefly in a summary, I've been in talks with the developer about this and we're not really getting anywhere yet. There seems to be concerns about, using that space as a green space, liability issues, so forth and so on into the evening. And so I'm still going back and forth with them, trying to determine, look, are you willing to try to find a creative solution here that we can do something with? And waiting to hear back from them. So we've been going back and forth about it for a while. But just know that I'm trying to do something with that as quickly as I can. They own the property. It's a weird situation, and we can't force them to do something in a situation like that. But I'm certainly trying to continue to work with them to get us somewhere, because they did some cleanup back there, and they felt proud of that cleanup. But then I walked by and was like, it's a distinction without a difference, right? And I think that's the important thing to say as someone who lives in the neighborhood, and many people who live in the neighborhood. It's not really any kind of wild improvement. So I'll leave it there. And sorry to leave, but I'll catch up with folks afterward.
Just on that note, and back through the chair to Councillor Kretsch, moving forward, is there anything that heritage staff can perhaps put in place so we don't see this sort of thing happening to a property that has been partially demolished or demolished, so it's left in that state? Question, thank you.
I don't know that I can answer it. I'm going to head out, but I'll just say that briefly before leaving that this is our perennial issue in terms of this idea of now we're seeing certain things that are occurring. We can't do anything in the moment to turn back the clock, but how can we get ahead of these things? The obvious thing I think about is tree protection, right? So if we have a conversation about tree protection right at the beginning of the development process and we find a way to do that in a certain kind of way, and we agree with the developer on how to do it, then we can do it well. Same thing with this, right? If we agree in advance of the project being well, there's going to be a bunch of what I'll call heritage-y stuff lying around that's going to get covered with weeds. Identifying that as an issue in the beginning, I think, is essential, because once it gets down to this point now where we have multiple owners over, it gets so complicated to be able to unravel that. So I'll leave it there and leave for staff to respond in more detail. But yeah, those are my thoughts.
Through the chair, would that require some sort of motion moving forward to have some sort of investigation there, rather than just leaving it open-ended and then trying to follow up on it at another meeting? I guess that's to chair, and I don't know. Thank you.
Through the chair to Janice, can you be more specific about your question?
Yeah, moving forward, right now we have a mess on our hands with that property. And so let's say another property comes down and the same thing occurs. Is there nothing that we can do with the people that own the property to clear that property and make it what I call somewhat presentable? For example, I'm driving down King Street and Main Street where all of the LRT takedowns have been, and for the most part, I would say that those properties are hoarded up with fencing, and they're clear. There's not, I don't want to say garbage, because it's not garbage, it's remnants of whatever the building was there. So I don't understand why James Street Baptist has to look like that, with all of the remnants of what was originally there left, including one of the large Gothic windows. Well, it's partially there, it's actually cut in half. or destroyed. Thank you.
Through the chair, we have learned our lessons from James Street Baptist. As you notice at Pinehurst, there was a much different approach, including trying to get them to be in the building, much more significant requirements around the heritage permit and at the site plan. So we have learned our lesson in that way moving forward. What we can do with James Street now is, again, as we are just reaching out to the applicant, the current owner, and reminding them of their bylaw requirements. And again, moving forward, we're hoping this won't happen again, and we'll be dealing with these issues as we negotiate with applicants through the site plan and heritage permit process to make sure we have securities and understanding to make sure the properties are protected.
I appreciate that. I think that is really important, and I think a good, having just saying thank you, I do believe that the work of permit review and this committee on the conditions at Pinehurst were a huge step forward in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Janice. Did you have any other properties you'd like to?
Yes, just briefly, and I did report it, but I don't know if anything was done. And it's 5456 Hess Street South, and it is the wall on Main Street side. I noted that I thought there was water, or I could see water or some sort of damage, and I don't know if anybody looked into that. That's my only other concern.
Through the chair, from my recollection, yes, it was forwarded. I can't recall if we had indicated that you should contact Emily directly, or if I had forwarded it and let them know. But
I think you did.
I do recall it having been followed up. I haven't received a follow-up yet, though, in terms of what the outcome of that, I guess, review was in terms of the state. So I can circle back around with Emily and update you offline if that works.
Yes, because I think that part of the building is vacant. The other side is not vacant.
Graham, you had some comments?
Okay, once again, we had another break into the Sunday school at St. Giles Church on Main Street East. And there was a couple of unhoused with tents out in the parking lot and piles of garbage. But the property owner very quickly got their property manager onto it and secured the door, and have cleaned up a lot. And the person or persons have moved on. So hopefully it'll keep up that way.
Any other properties you want to report on? Okay. Is there any other properties any other members would like to speak to? If not, may I have a mover and a seconder to receive those reports?
I see Graham and Lynn.
And is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that item is carried. We now move on to item 13.2, which is an update on our Hamilton Municipal Heritage Committee Heritage Recognition Awards. So I'm going to officially pass the chair over to you. It was a fantastic evening, and I think what came of it is that there's a lot of great work being done in the heritage community and in our city. If anything, it helped to educate those people in the room. Anybody that came and spoke with me was just amazed at what was going on and what they learned, and that they were able to speak with all of these people. And I know our artists walked away inspired. They were thinking about all these great properties that was inspiring them to do more great work, and our property owners were overwhelmed and just thankful for the appreciation. I think most of all, we need to do some thank yous. So we want to really thank the team at Bridgeworks. They were fantastic hosts to us. They were so extremely helpful. They made the evening move so smoothly. They helped with all the setup, and they were the experts in the sound and lights, and just made it a really special night for us. So we really need to thank Bridgeworks. We need to thank the management team and the staff team from the city for supporting us and helping us everywhere you could, and for coming out that evening to join us. Especially we want to thank Lisa Christie for all of the work that she did to help our education working group. There was a lot of emails and a lot of work and printing and things that had to get done in the background, and making contacts with the right people that we needed to do. So Lisa, thank you for all of that work that you helped with. To all of the Municipal Heritage Committee members and our Education Working Group members for all the work, again, that goes on to get us from nominations to that night. You know, no matter how small you think it is that you did, it really has a big impact on those people that are receiving the awards that day. We have to thank our HMHC family members because we had some behind the scenes. So thank you to Linda and Andrew. Without the family in the backgrounds helping us, so we really appreciated Linda and Andrew being there. And then our volunteer photographers, we had Kristen McLaughlin and Wolf Arndt that came out to help us do all the photography, which is a lot of pressure on them, I know. They enjoyed every minute of it. So Wolf is working on his photos right now, so we should get those shortly. So just want to thank everybody, and the nominations are open for the next round of awards, so we'll start on that again. But I say again, it was a fantastic night. I think everybody really appreciated it.
And a big thank you to Alyssa. She is so organized. And I said, you really should become an event planner in your next life.
Oh, go ahead, Robin. Hello there, you dropped in. Hi, Robin.
I just want to comment on the evening too. And the aftermath is that Mark McNeil did a wonderful story on our award winner. And at the end of his story, he said that he's going to pursue the other award winners and have more stories of heritage in the future on Tuesdays.
Yeah, no, that's great what Mark did. I've touched base with him and let him know that if there's any photos that we can provide to him, then we can do that. So no, that's great that it's got a life of its own. It's expanding. Go ahead, Elsa.
And just behalf of the city, we really want to thank especially Alyssa, but all of the volunteers. You folks put on such amazing events, and I know that we're providing some support, but it's your show. You guys did an amazing job this year. It's great to be back in person, and it's always, as I was saying, I think when we were chatting afterwards, it's always amazing, those unexpected sort of stories that are told, folks that we've never met that have been nominated by either members of the committee or through our online nomination form. And they're connected with this community that they weren't connected with before. And we're making, building those relationships and learning stories that we would never have heard otherwise. So really appreciate all that you folks do in terms of helping to promote heritage conservation in our city and show the positive side of heritage. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, may I have I will take the chair back. Aren't you happy, Graham? Yeah. May we have a mover and a seconder to receive the report?
I see Janice and Graham.
And is there anyone opposed? Carried. We now have item 13.3, which is our Ontario Heritage Conference update. So we have a couple of members here that attended. Lynn, did you want to say a few words?
Yes, I just want to say that I'm very thankful for the opportunity to have attended this conference. It's been, well, I don't know how many years since I've attended a conference, and I'd forgotten how dry hotel rooms are. I found it very interesting. It was a unique mix of volunteers and professionals and part-timers in all different disciplines. I found the session topics really diverse. Most of them were pretty good, and some had some technical difficulties. And I was sort of interested in the one that I don't think anybody else went to on tax grants and the different grants that are available under the different acts. But the one commenter, speaker said that they found, in general, heritage houses have a higher assessment, so people shouldn't be opposed to buying them or the usual pushback we get about a heritage designation. But that was interesting, and I meant to follow up on more of the information that they gave us. But I found it really good, and I hope that other people have the opportunity to go as well.
Thank you, Lynn. Graham, did you want to say?
Like Lynn, I'm thankful I got a chance to go. London surprised me. The amount of heritage buildings that are intact in their core is astounding. It makes me wish that Hamilton looked the same way, because they really have an amazing amount of old heritage buildings. When you go to a place like that and you see the plant like Kellogg, I'm sure everyone that was at the conference went. Kellogg was a large manufacturer within the city, and they closed up suddenly a few years ago. And one person bought it, and it's 1 million square feet of real estate, of floor space. It's not designated, but the owners have put beautiful reproduction windows in. They've maintained the heritage of the old part of the plant, and they've put an amusement park. They've put climbing walls. They've put climbing towers, golf simulators, skeet shooting simulators, restaurants going in, small vendors, large vendors, the Hard Rock Hotel's coming. They got a distillery and a brewery. The museum's coming, the Children's Museum's coming. It's just amazing. That was one of the tours that we all went on. It's mind-boggling when you see it. But it's interesting to see how different cities handle the heritage. And like I said, London I was impressed with, but everyone I talked to about our mapping of our heritage, no one has it. So you're gonna get a lot of questions from people because I gave out that link to about 10 different people.
You weren't supposed to give out her business card.
I didn't have a business card, I only gave out the link. But there was lots of questions about it, and they all love that kind of mapping, and they wish they had it. So you're gonna see a lot more click-throughs, I'm sure, from people learning how it works.
Will, did you want to say a few words about the conference?
Yeah, the conference was extremely interesting, and we've seen all different types of heritage, and one of the things that came across most to me is more about people heritage, the people behind the properties that we're looking at, and the city's cultural heritage, and the people of the city. And that was something that came across more than it building heritage that we kind of focus on. One exhibit was about Black heritage. And anyway, second part, the Kellogg's factory is just amazing. We nearly went to see Disney Immersive that's down there now. It was in Toronto and now it's in London. And well worth seeing. But unfortunately, we didn't have the time for it. But nonetheless, yeah, it was a pretty good conference. And a lot learned.
Thank you, Will. It was, I say, London did a fantastic job of hosting this conference. I know they were very excited about having everybody there from having been to Brockville. So to see the Wes and their organizing group finally get through it, I know how excited they were to have that come to them. I think the other thing, a good reminder to us is just how lucky we are as a Municipal Heritage Committee in Hamilton to have the level of staff and the support and just the resources that we have and the projects that we already have fully established and systems and those protocols in place. So many of the other Municipal Heritage Committees or just municipalities don't have that. And it's a lot of volunteers that are just left out on their own to try and manage build changes and all of the different things that are constantly happening. And you saw that worry in some of their eyes as they're listening to topics and discussions that were happening. So it's a good reminder to us about how lucky we are, and there's still more work to do, and that we can do better. We went to one of the sessions was on engaging youth in heritage, and I know we sat there thinking there was lots of different things that we could have said. We could have got up, and thanks to Graham, he said a few things to them, but to see how some of the municipalities really are just beginning, and we're that much farther along. So it's good for us, and that sort of inspires us to just keep on going, because what we're doing is between staff and the volunteers that we have and all of the working groups that we have, that the amount of work that's done, we just need to keep going, and we're in a good place. So. Go ahead, Will.
One of the major speakers was Alyssa Golden. And I'm sorry, Alyssa, what was your topic? I apologize.
Through the chair, yeah, I was asked to participate in a panel discussion with some other municipal heritage planners and representatives from the province about the rapid change of policy in terms of heritage conservation right now.
So it goes to show the kind of staff leadership we have here at Hamilton.
If there's no other discussion, do we have a mover and a seconder to receive the update?
I see Will and Graham.
Is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that item is carried. Do we have any updates from staff?
Through the chair, just a quick introduction. I know I gave an update last month in terms of onboarding and hiring new staff. We had already had Meg on board in her new role, and now Scott Dickinson has joined us, and he's with us here today. So just wanted to introduce you to Scott. You'll be seeing a lot more of him once he's sort of done onboarding. He's already digging into research, so lots more designations coming your way. Get ready.
Welcome, Scott. Hopefully they don't work you too hard, but there's lots, there's a very long list. Is there any other updates from anyone? Any news? Seeing none, may I have a mover and a seconder for adjournment?
I see Graham and Lynn.
Is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that item is carried. So our next meeting is scheduled for Friday, July 21st.
Oh, I can't be here.
All right.
On my way to